Hello, participants, and once again, welcome back to this e-learning platform on chromatography, jointly organized by Shatem and Science College, Patan, and Deepam Foundation. Friends, I had very good suggestions and feedbacks from you, of which there was a feedback on adding counter current to chromatography. Definitely, I will add it in future phases of the online course. We cannot add in this particular course. Second thing was a very good suggestion from one of the participant that you missed derivatization in GC topic while discussing GC. Definitely, if we consider it to be missed, we can, but we have kept it for session 3, that is phase 3, although we could add up in the future perspectives in phase 1. I had a good suggestion that, sir, why didn't you go through HETP? That is height equivalent to theoretical plates. Definitely I should go. But I have kept those mathematical aspects for the ninth day, that is numericals in chromatography. Even today, while we are going through gas chromatography, even yesterday when we were going through gas chromatography, sorry, and even today when we'll be going through column chromatography, I must include somewhere HETP. I will do it a little over here and leave the rest during the mathematical aspects, that is the day 9 numericals in chromatography. Friends, two more suggestions that are important. One is not a suggestion, one is a query, and that is question that was asked in your GC, that surface energy related MCQ. There is some mistake in the answer key. Definitely it's a mistake. What you are assuming, depending upon our classes, high surface energy is correct. Probably low surface energy might be given according to the messages I am receiving. If that is the case, you can omit that MCQ, no need to worry. So friends, these were some of your suggestions. Without wasting any more time, let me continue with today's session, that is column chromatography. Friend, column chromatography is a very vast area because under column chromatography there are n number of techniques, and few techniques like HPLC and GC and ion exchange chromatography that we have already discussed falls under the major category of column chromatography if we divide chromatography only into two aspects, planar and column. But over here, our discussion will be freezed to it as a basic tool in separation science. So let us just stick to a very basic application of column chromatography and start discussing this thing. Friends, column chromatography has its own importance. If you look towards its classification, it has classified into two: column chromatography and planar chromatography. Planar chromatography includes paper, TLC, and HPTLC, another important topic that is going to come in few days. And on the other hand, you have column chromatography. In or on the basis of column chromatography mechanism, theory, principle, HPLC, GC, ion exchange chromatography, and size exclusion chromatography functions. So, when you learn these four techniques, there are some points related to column chromatography that are already covered. But we are not interested in those points which are covered. We are interested in that chromatography, that column chromatography, which is a rational method where you only have a glass column, a very large, a very huge column, which you keep it in your synthetic lab and perform separation experiments. So today we are going to go with a very bottom line study on column chromatography. When we are discussing this column chromatography based on separation science, along with Michael Sweat, we should also remember D.T. Day. These were the two stalwarts who started chromatography. And as we all know, the experiment of Michael Sweat using a column was the first experiment where column chromatography actually came into existence. So today we are going to stick to that basic experiment and derivatize all our theories. So friends, sticking to that basic fundamental of column chromatography, let us begin with the theories related to column chromatography. When defining column chromatography, always remember it as a technique or a separation technique which is used to separate a single chemical compound from a mixture dissolved in a solvent, and that particular solvent is called a mobile phase. It separates substances based on their adsorption to the adsorbent. I am pausing here for a second or a while because here we could have written based on their electrostatic interactions, but that comes when you are going for ion exchange. Over here, as I told you, we are only focusing on that rational column chromatography, which is used generally in a laboratory, and the column is generally somewhat in a larger version of a burette, a simple glass column. So this definition sticks to a column chromatography where a simple glass column is only used and should not be projected to HPLC, GC or ion exchange chromatography. It separates substances based on their absorption to the adsorbent as the compound moves through the column at a different rate, which allow them to get separated in fractions. So what is the principle behind which column chromatography functions? When the mobile phase along with the mixture that needs to be separated is introduced from the top of the column, you can imagine a larger version of a burette, and from the top of the end you pass on your sample along with the mobile phase. The movement of the individual component of the mixture is at different rate. Why? Because they have different interactions with the stationary phase. The components with lower adsorption and affinity to stationary phase travels faster when compared to the greater adsorption and affinity with the stationary phase molecule. The components that move fast are removed first, whereas the component that moves slow are eluted out last. So these are the two very basic and important points, that is defining column chromatography and understanding the principle behind column chromatography. Moving ahead, we will be focusing on this simple column separation where you are having a column. It is filled with a stationary phase. If you can see over here, the stationary phase is filled in a glass column. On the top, a sample is loaded, and above to the sample, you are adding a mobile phase. Mind well, this sample is also prepared in mobile phase. It is not only the sample that is added. Now, when it is added over or it is filled over with the mobile phase due to the weight of the mobile phase and the gravity force acting, and you have to open the knob from the bottom, do not forget to open the knob. It will move downwards and both the compounds that are mixed starts getting separated, and as you move down both the compounds are separated and collected differently. Over here I am again repeating, and it will come further in the animated video. While you are just loading the sample which is already dissolved or prepared in a mobile phase, the knob, the key at the bottom, is kept close. But as soon as you start adding the mobile phase from the top as an eluent, you have to open this knob so that the pressure that is exerted from the top allows the sample to pass through. So we are just going to focus today on this step 1 to step 5, which are at a later stage explained in this discussion. But as I told you, no upgraded forms like HPLC or GC. Column that is focused in its simplest way, the Michael Sweat way, is going to be discussed today. Stationary phase and its properties. When we are discussing of column chromatography, always an adsorbent solid. Mind well, I am not talking of that column in GC. I am talking of a simple glass column. Always an adsorbent undergoing the process of adsorption for separation. What should be the properties of that stationary phase? It should be uniform and it should be spherical size, small balls, chemically and mechanically stable, inexpensive and easy availability. Mostly, if we have few selected stationary phase, all these properties belong to those stationary phase. Remember very well, uniform and spherical size is one of the major factor responsible because it provides a good surface area for the phenomena of adsorption to occur. So these are the properties that are determined for stationary phase. Selection criteria of the stationary phase. If you have several possible solid adsorbent, what are those solid adsorbent that you will be selecting? That criteria is nature of the components to be separated. If you are going to separate three component mixture and all three components are nearly non-polar, they have a difference in their polarity but they are non-polar, then friends, you must have your stationary phase failed with such a solid adsorbent which must have non-polar quality. Length of the column is quite important. If you go for GC or HPLC, there is a different variety of column. When you come to this rational or a traditional column, you have a different variety of glass column. Even if you compare the length of the column in HPLC and this traditional column chromatography, the column in traditional column chromatography is lengthened compared to HPLC columns, which are somewhat near to this pen or a little bit more than this pen. Similarly, there is a different aspect to compare the columns in GC and in traditional column chromatography, because when you are comparing with GC, you cannot directly compare, because over there your mobile phase is gas, and due to a very high diffusion rate of gas, you need to keep a lengthened column. But over here, when I am comparing the traditional column chromatography with HPLC, to an extent I can compare the length of the columns, because both use as of now liquid as a mobile phase. Adsorbent affinity of various components. The components adsorbent affinity must be analyzed or must be known a little before going through the experiment. Quantity of adsorbent required. You should know how much quantity should be added. If your adsorbent is a very high grade adsorbent, you require less quantity. If your adsorbent is a less or low grade adsorbent, you require a little high quantity. Examples of stationary phase: silica, alumina, calcium carbonate, calcium phosphate, magnesia, starch. These are few very important examples of stationary phase. Now, among these stationary phase, as I told you in the earlier slide, nature of the component to be separated is very important, and it can be correlated with the nature of stationary phase. Henceforth, remember these two statements, one in the light white color and the second in the yellow color. Behavior of stationary phase. Silica generally attracts polar analytes. Alumina attracts generally non-polar analytes. Silica has an affinity towards polar analytes, and alumina has an affinity towards non-polar analytes comparably. Comparably. Mobile phase in the column chromatography. Over here, mobile phase, that one molecule, has several roles to play. It means introduce sample into the column. If you remember, I'll go a little back. Over here, this green color mixture is when loaded onto the column in step 1. It is not directly loaded. It is mixed with the mobile phase. So the first role of mobile phase is to allow the sample to get mixed into it and help it introduced into the column. Point 2 is to develop band into the column. To develop band into the column, you are adding more amount of mobile phase, which will help to introduce bands into the column, means to separate the mixture. And number 3 is to elute components from the column. Sometimes what happens is two separated components do not go out but stay somewhere in between. If the mobile phase is less, mobile phase will pass away and the components will stay somewhere here. Now if you want to remove them out, if you want to elute them out, you need to add from the top mobile phase as an eluent, and then only they will go out. So to elute out the samples, to elute out the separated samples, you need to add the eluent mobile phase from the top, and this phenomena is called elution. So it is not necessary that once you have added this much pink amount of mobile phase, both the compounds will be thrust down and taken out. No, it might thrust down them to an extent. Now from step 3, where the components are separated, if you want to bring the green component down, you must add more and more amount of mobile phase, and that phenomena of adding more amount of mobile phase is called elution. So step 1 can be attributed to introduction of sample into the column. Step 2 and somewhat step 3 can be attributed to develop bands into column, and step 4 and step 5 can be attributed with to elute components from the column. So one mobile phase, three roles to play. So this is the importance of mobile phase. So mobile phase has to be highly selective while going for this simple traditional technique, column chromatography. What should be those things to be kept in mind while selecting a mobile phase? Components of metric must be soluble in mobile phase. Means the mobile phase you are taking must have the capacity to make the sample soluble. Number two, low boiling point because the separated components can be recovered. This is a very important technique. Remember this point that I am not explaining now, but after the video I will explain it. Depending on the polarity. Polarity is very important. And depending on the polarity, you have a wide range of mobile phase you can take. Water, benzene, toluene, carbon tetrachloride, acetone, cyclohexane, petroleum ether. I might have forgot over here to add many other important like methanol, like chloroform, but it is just a representation of different mobile phase. So these are some mobile phase. You can even add over here chloroform and methanol as I said as mobile phase, acetonitrile in few cases and so on. So these are the choices of mobile phase depending upon few criteria that are developed over here. Column is an interesting component over here. If you remember, in the introductory page, that is day 1 or day 2, while I was going through paper and TLC, I have very well mentioned the 2 dimension and the 3 dimension. Now if you think of a column, it is cylinder, it has volume, so it's a 3 dimension. It's a cylinder, it has volume, so it's a 3 dimension. It is made up of glass because we need some inert material that do not react with the stationary phase, that do not react with the mobile phase. So this is interesting. Column is interesting. But if instead of column, if we would have selected paper or TLC, yes, definitely it would have been planar or 2 dimension. And again, those who will be knowing a little bit more of chromatography, they would consider that I am speaking the paper and TLC to be 2 dimensional chromatography. No, no. I am saying that the paper, that the surface that is used in planar chromatography, that is paper and TLC, is a 2 dimensional. Is a 2 dimensional. The paper or TLC that is used in chromatography is an X and Y axis because it will be rectangular, so 2 dimensional. Over here, the column that is used has all 3 axes possible because of its cylindrical shape and having volume, and therefore it is 3 dimension. Okay, you are clear. This column again is made up of glass and it is inert. Now, in some column chromatography labs, usually there are long columns, and on the top of the column they keep a reservoir where mobile phase is filled, and at the bottom they keep collector. Over here, if you see, this small tiny part is a small reservoir where mobile phase is filled. This over here, something like a conical flask, is a part where you have a collector. Your eluent that is coming out along with the separated component gets collected over here. And here a simple separation mechanism from mixture to separate components. Friends, usually long column. Remember the example of that marathon race. Longer the column, better the separation. Remember it very well. Longer the column, better will be the separation. Hope you are getting what I am speaking. Moving further, experiment of column chromatography. There are 4 stages while designing the experiment of column chromatography: preparation of column, sample introduction, elution, and introduction. Friends, this slide will now be continued with a video over here. So let's see the animation.
Have you heard of column chromatography? Well, what happens in column chromatography is, as the name suggests, first we need to prepare a column. Now to do this, we keep cotton at the bottom of a clean and dry glass column. Now on this, a thin layer of acid washed sand is kept to support the column. The stationary phase, which could be alumina or silica gel or starch, mixed with a non-polar solvent such as hexane.
Over here, if you see, at the very bottom, either a cotton plug or glass wool is kept so that the layer of stationary phase can be supported on it. And over to there is finely powdered sand to help support the stationary phase that is going to come over it.
Plane is then placed. Now a thin layer of acid washed sand is again placed on top of the stationary phase. The mixture to be separated is now dissolved in a highly polar solvent, which could be, for example, alcohol, and is introduced into the column. Now let's see what happens after some time. The components of the mixture separate and they form thin bands. The component that is more weakly adsorbed will move faster through the column and therefore will get separated first. And the component that is most strongly adsorbed, as expected, will be separated the last.
So this was the animation. Friends, hope you have understood the video. The initial step was preparation of column, then it was sample introduction, then it was illusion, and here there is a typing error. Pardon me for that. This is collection of the samples. This is collection of the samples. Over here, I would like to draw your attention for a while. If we go back to the slides and come over here, low boiling points, henceforth separated components can be recovered. What is this recovered low boiling point? I will explain you over here. If you remember this video, which I am going to play again for a while, but we won't see the complete video.
Have you
We will
heard
come
of
over here.
what happens after some time? The components of the mixture separate and they form thin bands.
See, here the components are separating, and as the components are reaching to the bottom of the column, we are placing beakers in which the components can be collected. So, in this beaker, the first component is collected, and in this beaker, the second component is collected. Over here, if in this beaker you imagine where the components are collected, the components that are collected will be having mobile phase also. So if you evaporate that mobile phase, you will get that pure component, and henceforth the mobile phase should be having low boiling point, and when it has a low boiling point, it is that easy to remove that mobile phase from the beaker and you will get your pure component. So this is the reason why we are using low boiling components, and the separated component can be recovered. Why we are using low boiling point mobile phase, and it is used because the components that are separated can be recovered by evaporating the low boiling point mobile phase. Friends, this is again a slide where I am just explaining the same video once again so you get a clear cut idea. This is a first picture of the column. These are the picture of that same column at different instance. Over here you see that stationary phase is packed in the column. You are adding on it the mixture. The mixture is loaded on the column. Afterwards, eluent is added from the top. When you add eluent and allow it to pass, you can see your single mixture is getting separated into three components, and one after another you are collecting all the fraction of the components in separate test tube. And when this test tube are kept in a little boiling water, the mobile phase, if having low boiling point, will get evaporate, and you will have the substance at the bottom pertaining to the condition that the substance should have high boiling point compared to your boiling point of your mobile phase. Otherwise, you have n number of technique to separate two compounds, and especially two compounds means mobile phase and the extracted component. So I hope you are getting exact idea regarding the experiment of column chromatography. Please, while you are going through this slide, read these points which will help you understand step by step experimental procedure of column chromatography. Now, we have already used a word over here that stationary phase packed in the column. But what is the method to prepare a column? Before preparing the column, the adsorbent that you are going to use as a stationary phase is pre-treated to enhance its adsorption activity. But how to pre-treat it? To pre-treat it, you are heating it. So when you heat it, the pores open a little, the surface area increases, and hence they can be a better adsorbent. So while Preparation of the column, stationary phase being adsorbent mechanized is a solid in state, and you can prepare the column in two different ways, by dry filling method and wet filling method. Now comes an important question over here. What do we mean by dry filling? What do we mean by wet filling? These are two different methods to load the stationary phase inside the column. Number one, dry filling. Dry adsorbent is filled in the dry column from the top. Why I'm using the again word dry column? The column should not have moisture. After filling the column with adsorbent, the mobile phase is added up to appropriate mark. This mixes the adsorbent with the solvent. Sometimes air bubbles are trapped in the column in dry filling, so the column should be taped after filling to remove the air bubbles. Sometimes solvent B is added to the column followed by dry adsorption as shown below. Over here, I will first show you the dry filling method. This is method number 1, this is method number 2, and both the methods are used for dry filling. If you see in step number 1 of dry filling method 1, first a column is taken and a glass wool is placed at the end. Over it, a layer of sand is placed, then solvent is added. To this solvent, adsorbent like silica is added. It is allowed to settle and it is packed. This is one method of dry filling where first solvent comes, then adsorbent comes. The same dry filling, but another way of making the column. Over here, glass wool plus layer of sand plus you add silica first. After adding silica, allow it to settle. Once it settles, add the solvent, close it, pack it, and remove the excess of mobile phase. You are supposed to remove the excess of mobile phase even while you are performing method number 2 of dry filling, and even when you are performing method number 1 of dry filling. So at the end of this procedure, the stationary phase must be present inside the column with a very little amount of mobile phase on the top of the stationary phase. It should not be made completely dry. Mind well, this dry has nothing to do with the dryness of the stationary phase. This method is called dry filling method. Why? I'll come to it in a while once I've explained you the process of dry filling of stationary phase. Now let us go for wet filling. In this method, slurry of adsorbent is formed in the mobile phase. So here itself you might have got an idea. While we were discussing this dry filling, the dry silica was entered inside the column and then mobile phase was added. But in wet filling, outside in a beaker, the paste, a slurry, is made by mixing the stationary phase, that is silica, and mobile phase, and then the slurry is passed. So, as in the first method, dry filling, the word dry is attributed to the procedure and not to the state of the stationary phase filled inside the column at the end of the procedure. So it is called dry filling because first silica that is to be added inside the column is kept dry in a beaker. Over here, the word wet is used because the silica is from the initial stage made into slurry by adding a wetted material like mobile phase. So this is the difference between the word dry and word wet in the procedure of dry filling and wet filling. In this method, slurry of adsorbent is formed in the mobile phase by stirring. The slurry is added to the column from the top in small portions. A careful addition should be done to avoid the crack and get uniform setting of the material in the column. Shown below means in the next slide. After setting of material, the solid adsorbent settles at the bottom while solvent covers it at the top. The solvent is removed by the knob at the bottom and material is covered with a cotton plug. If you see over here, from the very first step, layer of sand and layer of glass wool, when you add the mixture, you are adding a mixture of both the solvent and silica gel as a mixture. It is allowed to settle and packed. In this figure, if you find a little different, do not worry. When you are adding this beaker, it contains both blue color mobile phase and silica gel. Whereas over here, both things are added in a separate manner whereas over here they are added in a similar manner. If required, a little bit solvent is allowed to pass first, and then your mixture or slurry of silica gel in mobile phase is allowed to pass. So this is the photographic view of dry filling and wet filling of the columns that are to be used as a stationary phase. These are very basic experiments and are regularly performed by researchers, especially in the organic chemistry separation labs. Sample separation and analysis. Once column are prepared, you have three steps: sample introduction, elution, and detection. Sample introduction. Sample is prepared by dissolving it in required amount of mobile phase, and solution is added at once and allowed to stand so that they come down and get absorbed on the stationary phase. Number two, elution. This is very important step. See what happens. Once you add your sample on the top, it gets a little bit diffused in the mobile phase. Then you are adding extra mobile phase, which is the method of elution, so that this separates out the component while pushing them down towards the gravity. So this refers to this point number 2. So when you are comparing it with the EPDF material, I will tell you very well, you keep your eye on the point number 3 to point number 7, that is 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, 4, 5, 6 and 7. These 4, 5, 6, 7 are related to the procedure of elution. Elution can be of two types: isocratic elution, gradient elution. If the mobile phase that is added has only one solvent, it is called isocratic elution, and if has more than one solvent, it is called gradient elution. Now detection. Detection is somewhat that I explained you just now with the beakers. Once you collect your sample that is separated in a beaker, you need to detect what compound exactly is present inside. So if color band fractions, they are directly collected and identified. If a orange color pigment and a red color pigment or a green color pigment is coming out, you can separate them in beaker. But if that is not the case, if colorless components are there, then they are collected in fractions and identified using TLC. Means I will collect a little in one test tube, second, third, fourth. I will consecutively collect all the eluent that is coming out in 10 different test tubes, and then I'll put them on TLC and I'll check in which TLC plate I am getting a separation. That particular respective test tube will have that component present inside. Friends, be aware that this is a very basic chromatography technique, and only theory in column chromatography won't help you to understand completely. You will require to do a little bit of practicals in column chromatography, and these are very basic practicals. You can even perform in your laboratory using same burettes what you use for titrations. No need to even purchase column. I have performed in burette and I have got results also with the burette. Yeah, there might be variation in the results, variation in the performance, but we can understand the theme behind the practicals. So friends, sample introduction, elution and detection. Once again, I want to justify, this is preparation of the column, this is sample introduction, this is diffusion of the sample, and this is the phenomena of elution. The column number 4 to column number 7 is the elution phenomena, and over here what you collect, then you go for its detection. So friends, this is detection components, these are elution components, and this particular is introduction component of the present theory what we are discussing. Factors that affect column chromatography: decreasing the size of particles. This is somewhat related to HETP, height equivalent to theoretical plates. Increasing the temperature during elution, length and width of the column, and selection of low viscous solvents. I will go a little bit in detail as I told you regarding HETP. You have to imagine what I am speaking, or rather you can draw in the book. I am confident that if you focus on what I'm speaking, you will get an idea while you draw a rough picture. You must draw on a paper two cylindrical shaped columns. No need to draw the cork, no need to draw the bottom point, only draw two cylinders of same size. In first cylinder, you fill stationary phase with squares or circles round a little larger in size. And in the cylinder 2, you fill it with the circles nearly 1/4 in diameter of the size what you filled in A. From this, step 1, I am repeating it again. Draw two columns, two cylinders. In one cylinder, fill it with small circles that are our stationary phase of a medium size. And in column 2, that is cylindrical shape 2, fill stationary phase with round circles at least 1/4 of the size in diameter of the first column. So you can see, if you tend to count the number of stationary phase bead present in the second column, they will be larger in number compared to the first. Do you agree? Because in first they are bigger in size, in second they are smaller in size. Now, this is an imagination. Even it is written in good books that this is an imagination. HETP is an imagination. I'll stop here for a while. I'll compare this with a very rational example. I have a height of 10 feet and I am keeping blocks of wood 1 feet each. And as the height is 10 feet and the height of one block is 1 feet, there will be 10 blocks. Agree. On the second side, let the height be same, 10. But height of each block is reduced to half a feet. Then the number of blocks will become 20. Agree. Come back to column. What you have drawn in your book. I assume you have drawn. The column that you draw first or drew first had bigger stationary phase beads and the second had smaller stationary beads. So now if you imagine those beads as layers, in the first column there would be less layers. In the second column there would be more layers. Compare it with those blocks. Now the 10 feet is the length in both. 10 feet is the length in both. But 1 feet and half feet are the height. So if you now go back and look into the drawings, the first cylindrical column that you have drawn has less number of layers and the second cylindrical column you have drawn has more number of layers. So where you have more number of layers, the separation will be more. Why? Because you have to pass through more layers. So you will be separated more. But in the column where there are less number of layers, the separation will be less. You will have to pass through less layers. So more the number of layers, more better is the separation. And to get more the number of layers, what are you doing? You are decreasing the size of the stationary beads. Henceforth, I have written over here, decreasing the size of the particles. This is attributed in numericals and chromatography lecture of ours, where the total height, which was 10 feet for the example, is coined as L. The height of each block, why I am doing like this, height of each block over 1, I have 1 feet, on the other end I have half a feet, will be H. And the formula will be N is equal to L by H. Number of theoretical plates N is equal to total length of the column divided by H, that is height of each imagined plate. So the total length, if is 10, number of blocks are 10, then it is 10 by 10. But on the other side, if you have 10 feet of the column and you have each block of half a feet, the number of the blocks will become double. So the N will become double. More the N, more is the efficiency of the components to get separated. Why did I not show the drawing over here? I wanted to have a rapport between you and me. What I am speaking, are you able to draw or not? And You will get an idea on day 9 if you are not able to draw. But what I have explained, I am confident that if you have got a repo with me in these 5 days, you would have been able to draw. I'll repeat it just in a minute. Draw two cylinders of same length and name them as L because both are of same length. In one cylinder, make stationary phase beads of larger size beads, and in the second cylinder, make stationary phase beads of 1/4 size of the radius of the beads in number 1. So you can imagine that in column number 1, the number of layers are less, and in column number 2, the number of layers are more. And now when you allow the mixture to pass from the top, the one having more number of layers, separation will be more efficient, and the one having less number of layers, separation will be less efficient. And to get more number of layers, the beads should be of smaller size, and henceforth I have written decreasing the size of particles. Last, before moving further, this can be given by another example of athletes. If in a race you see there is 100-meter, 200-meter, 400-meter race, but you have heard of hurdles, it is always 110-meter. Imagine I am keeping a hurdle after hurdle every 10 meter. So approximately you need to jump 10 hurdles. But if I keep those hurdles every 5 meters, you will have 20 hurdles to jump. Now convert these hurdles into imagined plates. So if you have more hurdles to pass, someone might not pass, some other might pass. So some component will remain back and some component will move ahead. So this is a comparison depending upon the number of plates. As of now, as I told you, we are restricted to basics and I want to purposefully keep that formula in the last lecture. I am not adding it over here. I might have repeated the same topic 2 to 3 times and someone might write also that sir you just elongated by repeating it twice or thrice. But mind well, along with faculties and research scholars, we also have our dear students of BSc and they will get into their mind only when I repeat it twice or thrice in absence of a picture. So pardon me for this fraction if I have wasted your 5 to 7 minutes. Moving forward, applications of column chromatography. It can be used in a separation of inorganic ions, organic molecules, even cis-trans isomers can be separated, plants can be extracted, that is plant extracts can be separated, drug and final products can be separated. Purification. Purification of the compounds is dependent on column chromatography. Even estimation of drugs in tablets and injectables can be done up to an extent in column chromatography, but the results are very poor. So you have to think of some upgraded technique, and that upgraded technique itself is HPLC and GC, derivatized form of column. Advantages and disadvantages of column chromatography. Separation of almost all compounds can be done in a column, and a wide range of amounts of sample can be used. If you take a wider column with a bigger mouth, bigger periphery, you can load more sample. If you take a smaller, you can add or you can load less sample. So these are the advantages. But there are few disadvantages. It is a time consuming method. Loss of components is there. Solvent is wastage. A huge burette. You will waste lot of solvent. Huge burette means a column. And lack in accuracy and precision because it's a completely human being managed system. And we know in human interventions that can be false. So friends, this was all about advantages and disadvantages. From here onwards, a basic traditional column chromatography without learning the mathematical aspects, that is theoretical plates, comes to an end. And if you remember our HPLC lecture, I started it from here that there were few disadvantages in column chromatography like more time consumption, loss of mobile phase, and insufficient or less precise results. And hence we require HPLC. So this is a major part we have covered in column chromatography. Above this, everything will be the different applied column chromatography that can involve ion exchange, that can involve HPLC, that can involve GC. So friends, this is enough for column chromatography. Probably this will be one of the shortest lecture in this series, or the second shortest lecture. So you will be little happy today that you should have spared less time today in learning this lecture. Hope you are enjoying, you are liking the lectures, your feedbacks and queries. I am receiving them. I am receiving many questions from you. I am able to reply few. I am collecting the others. Once I'll get more time, I'll come back on that with you. But I promise most of the questions will be replied during this session or this phase of training. Even if I miss, we are in touch now. We are now a online chromatography family. So I'll keep on answering them. You can keep on throwing questions to me. So enjoy these lectures, and we will be back tomorrow with one more technique of chromatography. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy during this pandemic COVID-19. Thank you.